Do I know Jesus? Of course I do. I've been going to church my whole life. I've been in church leadership for years. I have a little Christian YouTube channel I run. So do I know Jesus? Yeah, of course I do. But turns out that may be the wrong question. It's not whether I know Jesus, it's whether Jesus knows me. And I conclude that from something that Jesus himself said. Let me see if I can explain what the difference is. One of the most frightening passages in the whole Bible for me personally is Matthew 7:21 through 23. You know, that passage where Jesus tells those people that had been doing prophesying and mighty deeds in his name to go away because he never knew them. People that had been doing lots of church stuff were told to go away. Jesus tells them he never knew them. How could it be that Jesus wouldn't know these people that had been doing all this stuff in his name? And as I've looked at that verse over the years, I've always been intrigued by how Jesus said that. I noticed that he did not say those people didn't know him. He said he didn't know those people. Is there any significance to him saying he didn't know them as opposed to saying they didn't know him? Is it possible for me to know Jesus, but Jesus not to know me? Because that's the way he says it in Matthew 7. I've concluded that the way he says that does, in fact, matter. I've concluded that he said it that way for a reason. I'm going to do my best to try and explain why I think it matters, to explain why me knowing Jesus is not the same thing as Jesus knowing me. And for lack of a better way to explain my thinking, I'm going to use a personal analogy. We're going to time travel all the way back to my high school days, back to the previous century, as it turns out, to use some personal experiences of mine that helped me years down the road get my mind around this. For those of you that are curious, we're going back to the 1979-1980 school year. During my senior year in high school, I was involved in student government. My buddy that I'd gone to school with my entire life, from kindergarten on up, was the student body president, and I had the role of assemblies commissioner. That meant that I was highly involved in all the student assemblies like the annual talent show, the gathering of the students in the auditorium for special guest speakers, and all the other student body events. We would always start those events by collectively reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. And one of my duties was to call the students to order and lead them in saying the pledge together. And the first Thursday evening of each new school year, we always had a big get-to-know-you event out on the football field. And my role as Assemblies Commissioner made me the master of ceremonies, if you will. Here's a picture of me getting the crowd hyped up for a new school year. It's not like I had any great talent or was one of the all-star athletes, but this role of Assemblies Commissioner put me in front of the students on a regular basis, so they knew who I was. This was just something that went with the territory, as they say. I hadn't given that much thought in the years and decades that had passed since those younger days. That is, until I was reading Matthew 7:21 through 23 one day. And that's when it hit me. Maybe that phrase that Jesus used that had perplexed me for so long wasn't so hard to understand after all. You see, because of my position as Assemblies Commissioner, pretty much all the students knew who I was, as well as the teachers and staff. And one of the things that always was a little uncomfortable for me was that students would say hi to me by name. And yet I had no idea who they were, didn't know their name, didn't know what grade they were in. I academically, intellectually understood why they knew my name, but I didn't know theirs. But it still felt a little odd to me. They were speaking to me, calling me by name as if we knew each other, as if we had at least some level of a relationship. But we didn't. I didn't even know their name. And you say, what does that have to do with Matthew 7:21 through 23? Well, think about it. You know Jesus because of who he is. You know him because of the position and presence in the world that he occupies. But that doesn't mean he knows you. Just because you know him doesn't mean he knows you. Look, I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but it dawned on me when I thought back to my high school days. Just because those students knew me didn't mean I knew them. In the same way, just because I know Jesus doesn't mean Jesus knows me. And when I read Matthew 7:21 through 23, it's pretty clear that if I want to spend eternity with Jesus, he has to know me. And if he's going to know me, it means I have to have a relationship with him, a personal relationship with him, to the extent that he will get to know me. He'll know my mind and my heart and my struggles and my sins and all the other stuff that makes me who I am. I can go around and do all kinds of stuff in his name, waving his banner everywhere I go. But that doesn't assure that I'll actually have the needed relationship with him that allows him into my life such that he gets to know me. Such that we get beyond me knowing who he is and reach a point that we actually know each other. I know who Abraham Lincoln is. Abraham Lincoln doesn't know me. I know who the current president of the United States is. But the president of the United States doesn't know me. I could do stuff, lots of stuff, in support of his agenda. But that doesn't mean he would know me. And I am convinced that is what Jesus is saying in Matthew 7. You may know me. You may have done stuff in my name, but I don't actually know you. You've never actually had a relationship with me, so I could get to know you. I think Paul gives us great insight into this when he tells the saints in Galatia, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. You see, Christ wasn't just some role model or inspirational leader that Paul looked up to. Christ was the essence of who Paul was. Over time, Paul started to see the world as Christ saw the world. He responded to people the way Christ responded to people. He thought the way Christ thought. He became less and less and less of himself and more and more and more like Christ, because he died to self and let Christ flourish within him. In other words, Christ wasn't just someone that Paul knew about. Paul had a deep, meaningful, personal relationship with Christ. So when we look at Matthew 7, we need to ask ourselves, does Jesus know me? I know who he is, but does he know me? We know of each other, but do we actually know each other? Is there an actual personal relationship so that Jesus actually knows me? Matthew 7:21 through 23 suggests very strongly that our eternal fate hinges on the answers to these questions. I want to encourage you to give this some serious thought. I believe it's one of the most important things you'll ever think about. Thanks for listening. God bless you on your journey.